So Justin, are you attending Asian side of the dock for the first time?
No, this is my second time. The first time I did was in KL. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm happy to see it back in Southeast Asia.
All right. How important is this event for what you do?
Well, for what I do, documentaries and factual content plays a huge role in it. What I basically do is I finance content and media companies, and a lot of what makes money for us is on the factual side as well. Yeah. So having something like this, especially in our base of Southeast Asia, is definitely something we want to see happen again and again. Yeah.
So how has it been so far coming to this event? Have you been able to grab any good content?
So far we've been looking. Already from the first pitch, I've noted about 3 films that we want to follow up on and see how we can get involved in.
So what's the role of Aurora Media in the region? I mean, what do you do?
We work primarily as VC for content, basically, and anything to do with media technology as well. So we've been looking at projects that work on itself as content, but at the same time, how does it work with new technologies as well? And we think documentaries and factual content, it's always on the forefront of it. Yeah.
What makes a good documentary for you?
It may sound rote, but it is always the character. So I love when people pitch, they pitch from a very character perspective, not as an overview or a story perspective, but what a character does, how he feels, what's the journey that he goes through. And we feel and we know that that's the best way to actually hook an audience into a documentary.
Do you see the strength from documentary makers in this region?
In this region, as you mean Southeast Asia?
Southeast Asia.
Definitely. So there's 2 hats that I wear. The main hat that I tell you is that I run a film fund. The second hat that I wear is I'm also the executive director of the Southeast Asian Audiovisual Association, which is the largest network for creative producers in Southeast Asia and media investors. And the reason why I put so much time into this region specifically is because I see the potential every day when I see people pitching to us stories. We know there's so much stories in this region that hasn't been even documented or even told or even written. And a lot of what we want to do is to bring Southeast Asia into the world and to bring the rest of the world back into Southeast Asia as well.
So how powerful is documentary?
I think documentary is, there's a storytelling nature that you cannot replicate in any other way. There's an honesty about it, there's truth about it that people respond to straight away. And for us as both investors and people who sell the content, we lean on that a lot, because we know that what we are telling are human stories. And it's easier to hook an audience with documentaries. So I always see documentaries as being a big part of what we do.
But how big is the market for documentaries in the world?
Right now, the idea has always been distribution. The current framework of how documentaries are distributed and commissioned are always set with a few strong people around the world. And what we've been trying to do is try to disrupt that a little bit, bring in some private money in funding content like this, create more distribution sources in Southeast Asia for documentary filmmakers. Because right now you see a lot of documentary filmmakers in the region having to work with co-producers from around the world. And I'm a big proponent of co-productions, but it's always the financing comes from one part of the world into the other part of the world. What we want to do is try to make sure that financing from our region matches financing in other parts of the world as well.
What difference would that make?
Well, stronger anchors and story points, the characters that are being shown on screen, and creating an idea of strong creative producers from this region. Because right now you have a strong production economy in Southeast Asia. People come here to get production done on certain kind of stories that they want to tell, but you don't have enough producers in this part of the world that can formulate the story, drive the story, and also sell that story into the rest of the world. So the idea for us is to make sure that we are strong in that sense as well. And I think the Vice Minister for Commerce mentioned something like they want to bring Thailand into a knowledge economy, not just a a production economy, and that kind of fits to that as well. You know, you have some of the IPs that are actually being held in Southeast Asia.
But would finance alone fix that problem, or do we need
It
more?
will create infrastructure. You know, if the financing comes from this part of the world, the IP stays in this part of the world, the distribution stays in this part of the world, and we look at how we have a base here, how we can work on the same level with people in the rest of the world as well. Because right now it's very lopsided. Yeah.
Any message to the organizer of the event?
I think you should stay in Bangkok. I think it's a great event, and when I think about it right now, I don't think there's a better place in Southeast Asia that it could be held in. So hopefully for the rest of the Asian side of the docks, it would be here.
Glad to hear that. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Thank you.
Yeah.